Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. In the previous several videos, we looked at what database mirroring is, and I went over the process of setting up a database. Here, you'll notice here I've set up a few more mirrors on the principal server right here, and there's the destination, which is the mirror. You can see that I've added, this one is the one we are working with, but I've added, just for clarity, a prod database that's being database mirrored, and a database called 1 million, and that's also being mirrored also. And here are obviously the mirrors here. So in this particular session, what we're going to look at is how to monitor database administration through the GUI and through the SQL T-SQL scripts, and I'll be providing all these scripts that we go over. The first thing I want to do, obviously, is go through the look at the GUI interface of how to monitor it. And it's essential that once you set up database mirroring for whatever databases that you have, that you constantly monitor them to make sure that database mirroring is basically synchronizing with each other. So this is what this video is going to be about. So before I get into the T-SQL scripts that allow you to do it through T-SQL, let's look at it how you do it through a GUI. So the one I wanted you to look at, now in this particular case, don't worry about adding these servers, these databases. Just at this time, I just want you to pay attention because the principle is the same. Now here you'll notice I have a database called 1 million, and it's being mirrored. So in order to look at the view, I'm going to right click, go to tasks, go to launch database mirror monitor, and this will pop up. Now obviously you can see all the registered database mirrors that I have here. You can see that the 1 million database is being synchronized, and here's it is, and then also the mirror. Now obviously you'll notice that I have a database called prod that is being mirrored, and it's not here. So in order for me to view that, you just have to register it, and all you have to do to register it is go to action, register database mirroring, and then just select the one from, let's go from here first, and it'll connect, and obviously we can just check the prod, go OK, and there we go. And now if we click on that one, you'll see that they're synchronized. So the whole idea is to make sure that the mirroring state is both synchronized. And obviously we've got the current role, which is the principal and the mirror. And then obviously if we had a witness here, we could see it here, but we don't. So the ones I want to actually look at, because I'm going to be demonstrating that, is making sure, looking at the 1 million, because we're going to do some activity against this and see how these build. So let's look at that. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to, in this database, I have tables that have 10 million rows. People 3 and people 4 have 10 million rows. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to import the table to 1 million database, and then look at it and monitor it and see what's going on, and then I'll start explaining the relevant stuff that you should be monitoring during activity. So this is just going to emulate activity, and again, don't worry about this, just pay attention. So go to tasks, obviously, well, not go to tasks, I'm going to import the data. So we've gone through the import wizard before of how to import data from the source destination. I'm just going to put a dot here for my connection of database, and I'm going to go to SQL, and I'm going to dump the data to the newly created database. I have 1 million, which is mirroring, and I'll just go next, and I'll just go next. Oops, I'll just select this one. Now remember, this has 10 million rows, and I'll just go finish and start. So now the activity is running. As you can see, the process of importing all that data from the this database SQL to 1 million is occurring, and it's going to be 10 million rows. So while that database activity is going on the background, obviously you want to monitor it. So what we want to do now is look at this database here, or this database monitoring through. And obviously we wanted to select, make sure you, if you have several database monitoring, make sure you select the appropriate one. In our case, it's 1 million. The things that you look at here, obviously, we want to look at the mirroring state. And if I go refresh or F5, it's still being synchronized. Now here, obviously, you've got the principal log and the mirror log. And the ones we want to pay attention to, we should be certainly paying attention to all of it, but the most critical ones are the unsent logs. Now, obviously, on the principal log, as the activity is occurring, as you know, the activity is occurring. We want to keep this virtually zero or minimum to a minimum number. We don't want this increasing. So let's look at why. So while I recommend you pay attention to all the properties of the GUI, a few we should take in consideration are the following. An increase in the unsent log indicates that the size of the transaction log being generated on the principal server has not been sent to the mirror. So we're trying to determine how much of stuff, data stuff, has not been sent to the mirror. And obviously 0 is a good point. This increase in number will indicate that during a failover, this data will be lost. So may pay attention to this one. That's very important. And that's over here, right here, unsent logs. So you want to keep this at a minimum. The other thing that we want to look at is the unrestored size log shows how much transaction log has not been replayed on the database mirroring. The larger the unrestored log, the longer it will take to fail over. So this is what we're talking about here. Now, obviously, we want to make sure that this number is not increasing. Obviously, there's going to be a slight latency between this and this, but we don't want it to be too much. And you can see it's synchronizing automatically. But the unrestored log is getting a little bigger here. Not that much, it's just 1 megabyte, but that's fine. So we want to make sure that this is doing well and not increasing in number. And certainly this is not increasing number. And again, if we refresh it here, go to F5, we want to keep this minimum as possible and the minimum as possible here. So now as the activity continues, let's go back to our, let's see what's happening. I don't know if it's finished or not. Let me see where it was. Maybe it did complete. Oh, there it is. Did not, sorry. Well, I did complete, actually, that's why. So there's your 10 billion rows again. So let me actually redo that so you get a better idea again. So let me do that. Go to tasks, import data. Because this is an important concept to understand of what to monitor and what to look for when those numbers are increasing. And that should certainly give you an indication of SQL2. That should give you an indication that something is going wrong. As long as there's compatibility between the principal log and the transaction, let me look at this one. Let me make sure I do this, and then we can talk, or I can talk. So here we go again, because that went pretty fast. So again, the activity is going on. We want to make sure that they're being synchronized. We want to make sure all the data that's being piled up on the principal log is being sent to the mirror log, and that's being restored in a timely fashion. So these are the two critical numbers that we want to look for. And obviously, it's talking about the kind of refresh rate and send rate and so on. The other thing you want to look at is the warnings. Now, obviously, you can set thresholds here. And I'm going to quickly do it while that activity is going on, if I can. Basically, you want to set thresholds for this. If the unsent log exceeds whatever, so I'm going to check all these actually. I'm going to check them all these. And if they go beyond 300 kilobytes for these two properties of unrestored, unsent, then I want and this obviously the threshold is just 1, so we should get activity, but this obviously will be different in a production database. So I'm just going to go OK. Now, when you set this, you look at it here. When the threshold is exceeded, an event is logged in the application event log. So that's another place we want to look at while we're monitoring this. Let me go back here. Let me look at this. And as you can see now, unsent log is building a little, but if we refresh it, okay, it's continuing, which is good because we want to know why this is happening. And that's a good thing. Now, the other reason is let's continue this. It's still syncing here. And it's still going. So it's about 500,000 done, or 5 million done, I should say. So as this number increases, we should be concerned about. But this is normal at this point. It's a question of how much data is being imported from the principal to the mirror. And is this becoming now? These numbers are determined obviously by your business thresholds. You determine how much data of unsent log is relevant to your environment, and how much unrestored log is relevant to your environment. And if it goes past that threshold, then obviously we want to set these thresholds that we have. So we're up to 6 million. Now, obviously, the way to look at the application log is go to Management, Server Log, or double click it. Oops, I'm sorry, expand it, double click Current. And here, just uncheck this, and you can see the Windows NT and check the application. And here you'll see that we're getting unrestored log has been raised for both actually the servers right here. So you can see the different instances has been raised. So that's a good thing. So it's monitoring. And obviously, as I said, for demonstration purposes, I set the threshold to 1, but this would be certainly higher than 1 kilobyte in your environment. But just to see that, how it's working, this is another place we were monitoring it. So these are the kind of places we want to monitor. And in a second, once this is finished, I'll show you how to monitor the database mirroring using these scripts here. And that'll give us a tremendous amount of information also. So now you get the idea of, and obviously, as long as this is synchronizing, that's the most important thing. If you see green arrows here and it's saying synchronized, that's a good indication that even though these numbers are slightly raised, that we're in a synchronized mode. Remember, we're in synchronous mode right here. So if it was asynchronous, we may have a slightly more delay and data loss possibility because it's not being sent to the mirror log immediately and then sent back to the application. And remember, we spoke about that earlier. So I think this is going to be finishing soon, and then that's it. So this is the way to monitor through a GUI, and it's a great physical GUI to give you a visual understanding of what's going on behind the scenes when you're looking at database mirroring. And this is almost done. And then, as I said, we'll start talking about the SQL queries that we have. So I hope you get a sense of the understanding of what to monitor, what numbers to look for, what thresholds to set for, and so forth. And this is almost done. And obviously the numbers are decreasing now because we're almost completed. And again, so these two I would, just in a nutshell, these two are numbers I would constantly look at. And keep a look at for the mirroring state. If you see anything other than synchronized, then we want to investigate why. And again, we can go into, obviously looking at here, we can look at certain scripts that I'm going to be showing you. And also, well, it's still going. It's almost done, 96.